Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. We are live. We should be live. Hopefully, I think I can see that I'm live. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. Happy Friday once again. Hope you all are doing well. Thank you so much to our early crew who show up early for these live streams. It is wonderful to see you all. I've been working on a lot of stuff, okay? I'm working on Neil Gaiman stuff. I've been working on Marilyn Manson stuff. I've been working on House of Cataphor stuff. And I just... Zen. Zen is what I need. Okay, we are indeed live. Okay, I finally figured out the lights again. I had to uninstall and then reinstall the Logitech digital apps thingy because why not add more steps between you and the product you're trying to use, right? But hope you all are doing well. Any fun stories, any updates? I know, Lexi, things have been rough. I hope you are doing okay. Yeah, the health struggles are really difficult. Yeah, I have some of that going on in my own family right now, and all that we can do is hope for the best, unfortunately. The creeps, and the creeps, it seems, to paraphrase Spaceballs. I have not seen Spaceballs in over 10 years, I think. It's been a minute. I should revisit. I'd also like just Mel Brooks movies in general, too. This week is the worst. At least we got a bit of rain because my eyeballs were drying out. Oh, I know. It's been so dry. My skin's like, it's like desert. My advice for dry skin is the CeraVe Healing Ointment. The tube, it's like $11 at Walgreens, wherever you want to get it from. Little pea-sized amount of that at night, all over your face. Perfect. Beautiful. Don't need anything else other than sunscreen. Oh, okay. Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, it is. I'm bad at pronouncing things, but yes. Imbolg, I think, is what it is today. One of the Wiccan / pagan holidays. It was around that time, at least. The beeps, the sweeps, and the creeps, but for Gaiman, Manson, and House of Cataphor. Yes, that is... They are quite the trio, aren't they? They haunt me. They haunt me on my channel. And, like, I would love it if any of them went to prison. Like, I have to be honest. If anyone I talk about... Like, it's shocking. I have covered, like a half dozen cases of various people using BDSM and or social media as a way to get access to young, vulnerable people for inappropriate, non-consensual sexual contact. Like, and none of them have ever seen the inside of a fucking prison. Like, any of them. And they really should. Well, that's not true. They haven't been convicted. The House of Cataphor guy, he has been in jail. But he hasn't been, like, charged and then gone through a trial. And then, yeah, he's been held there. But you get the difference, hopefully. You get the difference. Yeah, I gotta knock him off the cover just... Yeah, but the thing is, it's gonna take a while. Because all of them require, like, the House of Cataphor one, I'm doing one video on. Marilyn Manson, I'm doing 2 videos on. Neil Gaiman, I'm doing 2 videos on, just because there's so much to talk about, and, like, there's documentaries, and there's court cases, and just, it goes on for a long time. But hopefully, it'll be worth it in the end, because I know there's not very many people on YouTube covering that stuff. But before I start rambling too much about all that, let us go ahead and do our little introduction here. So, hi, hello, my name's Evie Lupine, and here on my channel every Friday we stream at 6 o'clock Pacific time. This is an 18+ only live stream, so if you are not at least 18, please do not be here. You can technically be watching the stream, because I can't stop you, but please do not participate in the chat. That is for your safety, my safety, everyone's safety, because mixing minors and adults, giving advice about sex and kink. We just literally talked about how there's lots of people who misuse access to minors, and I don't in any way want to ever facilitate that. So that is just the rule for that. We also have another set of rules in the description box down below, where if you haven't been here before, it's been a while, please go and review them. It's very easy. Just respect me, respect the mods, don't spam the chat. If you want to ask a question, I recommend asking it early. If you try to, and not like a lot of streamers where I have 10,000 comments going by every minute. Like, you can, if I don't answer a question immediately, I probably have seen it. If you re-ask it again 2, 3, 4 times the same hour, I'm not going to see the 4th time sooner than the 1st, because I go in the order that I get chats in. So just be aware of that. And if you want to make sure that I see your question, you can always use a super chat. You can go through YouTube with a little $sign, or you can go down to Streamlabs below. Both of them will pop up on the stream, which, good reminder for me to plug in my headphones. It'll pop up on the stream, and depending on how much you donate, it'll also read out your question, which is very cute and adorable. Just got back from a business trip, and this is a nice way to settle back in home. Oh, that's great. Well, I hope you had a good business trip. I know business trips can be stressful and unfun, but hopefully it wasn't too much of either one of those things. Hi, Evie, and everyone. It's been forever since I've been off on a Friday to catch a stream live. Well, glad you could make it, Emma. Thanks for being here. Oh, I didn't know that it was actually celebrated as like a holiday in Ireland. Oh, okay. I thought it was just a neo-pagan thing, because that's how I know of it. But it's also often celebrated on February 1st or 2nd by neo-pagans. Oh, I see. Okay. Well, I didn't know. Thank you for the education. Hearing your knowledge makes my Friday. It makes my everyday. Thank you, Widow Parker. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to go back up in the chat here, and we're going to start getting into some questions before I ramble about everything. Oh, and I also forgot to say, too, in the title of the live stream, I always put a couple of topics that have been on my brain. And if you want to talk about those or ask questions about those, we can definitely do that. But it's really whatever y'all want to talk about. And we talk about all kinds of stuff. So it could be BDSM stuff, kink stuff, dating apps, relationships, polyamory, queer stuff, pop culture stuff, things I've covered in videos. Whatever y'all want to chat about, I am here for you on these Fridays. So it's really whatever y'all are feeling like, within reason. Obviously, I'm not gonna, there's constraints. It's YouTube, like there's some things I don't talk about. Like I'm not gonna give you advice on how to do choking or how to do blood play or anything like over a YouTube live stream. Like that's just not, it's not gonna happen. It's just basically it. Oh shoot, I knew I was forgetting something. I don't have the bandit camera turned on. I was running around and I was like, okay, I had to stop and I had to reinstall my camera stuff. And I was like, I think I have everything. I'm ready. And what is it? And it's the camera. All right. So hopefully I can just turn this on. It'll be easy peasy lemon squeezy. Oh my gosh. It's already on my puppy. Look at that. She's been having a great time lately. She's been loving life. I did technically move her favorite blanket because I had to vacuum the floor, and it was in the same spot for 2 weeks, and she's coping, as you can see, by just being fully, completely, passed out. When she's like this, I have to check to be like, are you breathing? Are you okay, dog? And the answer is yes. She is fine. All right. He's just so fluffy. It just hides, it just hides her rib movement. I built a stool to sit on in the shower, which was a huge mistake because just chilling on said stool under a shower with a cocktail, I never want to leave. That does sound amazing. How do you prevent the water from the shower getting into the cocktail, though? Do you have it in I'm just the most wine mom thing ever. Get this for the wine mom in your life, or don't if you don't want to facilitate alcoholism, okay? But one of those Stanley cups, those TikTok Stanley cups with sangria in it, and popping that in the shower. That is, I don't even, people have a glass of wine in the bathtub, right? It's a thing. It's a thing that people do. Oh, it's a sippy cup. That is very funny. I will never forget the one time I was at an event, and there was a little there who was all in Littles gear, right? They were in a onesie, tutu, the whole traditional Littles get up, right? And they went outside and they were smoking, they were alternating, this is before vapes were a thing. So they were alternating smoking a cigarette with taking a sip from their sippy cup. I don't know what was in the sippy cup. I'm assuming it was apple juice, but it very well could have also been a cocktail, to be honest. That wouldn't have been the most shocking thing I've ever seen in my life. So that was really funny. I like that. It's Littles are just, if you just took a snapshot of that, right? If you took a snapshot of that moment of Little outside, in a covered, dungeon area, but still outside for a smoking spot, smoking, with a sippy cup, hanging out with a bunch of people in leather, you know, who are totally dressed not like them at all. I think that's just like, that's the BDSM community. There you go. If you're ever like, what's the BDSM community like? There's an example. I know. I had to move it though. I had to. And now I have it somewhere else now, and she hasn't made it perfect yet. So I got to move it back to its original spot. Ooh, how about dating older people? Because I'm 24 and I'm just really interested in dating older people. I feel like I've been talking about like age gap relationships a lot. I'm probably good at making a video about it then in that case. Age gap relationships. What are they all about? How to do one as a younger person who wants to date older people. As somebody who is now not a young person, but also not old, but for my entire young adult life has been in age gap relationships. What are my thoughts about that? And I think it's really worth evaluating, as with any kink related or dating related thing. Why do you want that? What is the motivation specifically for dating older people? Because for me, dating older people is like a side thing that happens incidentally. Like either I meet people in person and I don't know how old they are, and then I get to know them and then I find out their actual age. Or I am on dating apps and I have a pretty wide age range of people that I'm open to talking to and connecting with. But I'm more looking for, are we in the same place in life? Do we want the same things in a relationship? Do we have similar kinks, similar ways of doing polyamory? Are we compatible is essentially the question. There's not really anything about a person being older in and of itself that is a positive for me. Like, I mean, maybe when I was a lot younger, when I very first started, when I was like, 21, 22, when I very first started dating older people and having age gap relationships more regularly, it was because, well, not really because, it was a relief, it was a positive that my partners at that time, like, had money to go do things. Because, I'd been dating people in college, none of us had any money, and, like, we couldn't go out and do stuff. And so having somebody that, had an apartment and had a car and had a job and a career even, that was a really big positive that people in my own age bracket didn't have. If you're 24, you're in a place where people are starting probably to get into their careers and their jobs, so that maybe is less of a concern. But, there's a difference between I'm incidentally dating people who are older versus I'm looking to date older people because I believe something about older people is inherently better, or the worst version of that, which is I'm dating older people because I hate myself, and dating like old, like ugly people is how I do some kind of convoluted form of like emotional self-harm. There are definitely people who do that where they don't think that they're like worthy of relationships with people that they're close in age with, and they're trying to replicate either like a toxic relationship with a family member, or maybe like a puppy love crush they had on like a teacher in school, and as opposed to healing from that, it becomes a relational schema that's very difficult to get rid of. But that's a whole thing to unpack there. Yeah, it's mostly evaluating yourself, where you're at in life. Are you independent? Again, I have a whole video where I've talked about sort of the green flags for age gap dating. But the main things are, why are you doing it? Why is the person you're interested in wanting to date younger people? Because there's a big difference between somebody who's like, hey, I can't wait to break in and mold a brand new submissive who's only 21 years old, and like, oh, it's so hot that this 22-year-old is let me fuck them, and that, like, oh, that's so creepy, that's so gross. And I have had people say that to me, and let me tell you, if you're an older person and you want younger people to be into you, you know what is a definite mood killer? Saying, oh my God, I can't believe this fill in the blank age person is letting me fuck them. Don't say that ever to anyone. Unless it's for an objectification thing and it's consensual, and okay, that's fine. Obviously, I'm not talking about that. But in just everyday attempting to be a romantic conversation, don't do that, please. Please, for your own success in dating, if nothing else, please don't say that. But evaluate sort of why the person you're talking to is into age gaps. Like, are they also looking specifically for younger people because they have some kind of belief about younger people being, more pure and more likely to be a virgin, a lower body count? I don't believe those things are positive. That's not within my value set to date people who believe those things. And to be honest, like, even if you don't necessarily care about those, I think older people who have those kinds of beliefs are not really the best people to be in age gap relationships with, because they kind of see you more like a cute toy than a full human being. But it's complicated, for sure. It's complicated. Just wanted to say that I went to my first munch the other day, and it was very cool, and I probably never would have done it if not for the channel. Aw, you are so welcome, Rachel. I'm very proud of you. Congrats on going, and I am glad that you had a good time. Okay. So I think I will just leave the answer to that question there for now, and then if there's more follow-up stuff, I will continue on for that. Yeah. And I mean, if you get into, like, people are always going to make assumptions. If you're in an age gap relationship, people are definitely going to believe, oh, you're only dating that person because they have money, or because, you know, they're super young, or, oh, you're divorced. This is like your midlife crisis relationship. Like, people are going to make assumptions about you based on your dating habits. And like, you have to also be prepared to deal with that. What are you doing, Pupperini? What is she doing? I can't tell. He's up to something. Looking at something. Probably a ghost. All right, next question. We are moving on. What's good for dinner? I've got chicken tacos and mac and cheese. That is 2 comfort foods together in one combo. That is an impressive maneuver. I had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich before stream, and I actually have a little bit of my milk left. That's one of my, like, I don't want to cook foods, is always have stuff in the house for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Okay, we got a question here from Johnny Prince Charlie. Life update / question. I'm subbing for a couple of DOMs and a big party in a couple of weeks. Ooh, exciting. There will be whips, stocks, CBT, and butt stuff. I love it. And butt stuff. How do I put on a good performance but not push myself too hard? One of the DOMs is the event organizer, and it will be a show scene. So there'll be an audience of maybe 100 people. Oh my goodness. Any tips on focusing on the scene / moment and not the crowd? So if I was in your position, let's kind of work backwards here. If it's just, I want to not be thinking and focusing on the crowd, but I want to be centered in the moment, for me, that screams sensory deprivation. Like, earplugs, blindfold, hood over the head, just, especially if you can get noise canceling earbuds or headphones to put in, and then maybe, like, depending on how the venue is set up, you could potentially do something where maybe a partner is mic'd up to be able to talk to you, but you're like, you can make other sounds out in the background, but you can't necessarily, like, see anyone else very well or hear any other noises very well. And that can be a good way of staying with communication lines being open with the people you're playing with, without necessarily letting in all the noise of the whole dungeon and all the distractions they're in. But not everyone is super into sensory deprivation. A lot of people feel claustrophobic. They don't like anything on their eyeballs, over their head, anything like that. So your mileage will vary with that one. I would just say, like, mix and match with that as much as you can for what feels good to you. You did say there would be stock, so you're already going to be in some kind of restraint in general. So I think layering on, again, you know, blindfolds, some kind of ear covering, head covering, a gag even too. Anything that keeps you and your body and your sensory awareness and not what's happening externally, I think will be a good thing. As far as putting on a good performance, if you're going to be doing like CBT and butt stuff, okay, we're going to be doing like the manscaping, right? We're going to, like, if you want to do grooming stuff, do that. Definitely for butt stuff, I guess that could be anything from like wearing a butt plug to like anal fisting. So hopefully your DOMs can give you some advice on what to do for that. I would probably recommend, especially if you're going to be doing a show, you're going to want to be fully cleared out. You're going to want to be doing like enemas beforehand. You're going to want to make sure you're like fully all the way cleared out. I met somebody who recommends like routine enemas like every single time you have anal, because that can actually be really dehydrating for people. But like a one-time thing for a show, I think is perfectly acceptable for that. And then I would probably, I don't know what time this event is, but I would fast beforehand just to like make sure everything's totally okay. As far as that feels reasonable to you, because if you're going to be doing a lot of impact play, you don't want to be like starving and like faint feeling, but I would just eat like very, very light stuff that's not gonna, don't have Taco Bell beforehand, all right? Just basically, don't have Nando's, don't have Taco Bell, okay? Don't have anything that's like super spicy, beans, whatever, okay? Use common sense. But you know, I would probably prep for it. Like I'd have maybe like a big lunch the day before and then like a lighter dinner and then something very, very light for breakfast if anything, and then like go from there. Obviously dependent upon your energy levels, what feels good. I don't want you to fade in the stocks because you didn't have any energy in your system the day before. But honestly, good performance would probably be, especially if you're not going to be making like eye contact with the audience, or you're going to be trying to stay focused on your partners, it's probably going to be with the noise that you make in your bodily reaction. So really letting out, not bottling anything up, you know, screaming, crying, sobbing. The auditory component is going to be a really big thing to project for the audience to be able to connect to. And then also like body movements, right? So if you're more on the bratty side, you know, kind of swinging a little butt around. If you want to be really obedient, just being like very, very, very still, trying to take things very calmly. Depends on the flavor of the scene you want to have. But I think everyone loves a whimpery sub. So if you just sort of embrace that, I think it'll be beneficial for people. Cleaning out and plugs are definitely in the order of the day. Yes, yeah, you definitely. If you're going to be doing plugs, I'd even start, if you're going to be doing it in a couple weeks, depending on how much butt stuff you do regularly, I'd be wearing butt plugs like as much as possible for like the week beforehand for sure. But if you're already doing that kind of stuff, you probably know what routine works for you. But not pushing yourself too hard. As far as that side of it is like, how do I not push myself too hard while still having a good scene that's going to be enjoyable both for the people in it and for me and for people watching? I think as much as you can, if you haven't already, like really thoroughly negotiate with the people that you're going to be playing with. Maybe come up with some kind of like nonverbal hand signal that you can use when you're in the stocks to communicate the level of intensity that you're at versus where you want to be at, right? You can talk about how, you know, if you want to do a really long scene, you know, you maybe want to stay in that like 4 to 6 range. Whereas if you want short and intense, you're going to want to maybe say that 7, 8, 9 range, right? Or if you want to go for a really long time, but maybe just play it up for the audience, you can stay more in that 2, 3, 4 area. And so it's about calibrating. Although, you know, you're not probably dealing with like, you know, hormonal cycles the way that some people are. So it'll probably be a little bit easier for you to just generally know, okay, this is what my pain tolerance is for these instruments. This is what level I perceive them at. This is how far we can go with them. And then, you know, talk about kind of like setting expectations for the scene of like, are we doing something that's going to be really short and intense? Are we going to try to just play for as long as possible and like make it more of a performance and less of like an endurance scene? You know what I mean? So it's about calibrating that and then having maybe some way to communicate in the scene itself of like, okay, we're going to aim for that, let's say 4 to 6 range, right? And then you can give them hand signs for like where you're at. So even if you're wearing a gag and stocks, etc., at least one of the DOMs will hopefully be able to see what your numbers are and then calibrate based off of that without having to, you know, break the immersion for the audience of like, all right, pause, check in, take off the gag. All right, what number are you at? Okay, let's keep going. Although I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing if you end up doing it. Like I wouldn't feel ashamed of needing to stop to really clearly communicate because though it is a performance thing, I think it's good to also demonstrate, and maybe this is just, you know, my own priorities for what I think is important. I do think it is important to demonstrate like pausing, checking in, and really, like, if you do that, you can have a better, longer scene. So, like, why not do it, right? We're also doing a dry run / rehearsal a week before, and the nonverbal symbols have been discussed. We're going to go with, and then you had some hand signs in there for yellow and red. Okay, perfect. Yeah. And then if you want to do, like, the numbers thing, you could definitely add that in for just, like, an extra level of communication if you feel like it. But yeah, I think it's, you know, I'm assuming you've played with all these DOMs before. You kind of understand their style. Hopefully they don't egg each other on too much, hopefully in the moment. But I definitely am curious to hear how the dry run goes. Dry run. Hopefully that goes well and definitely keep us updated. Interesting question though. Because most of the performances I see are for rope. So, like, it's very, like, they've practiced doing those ties, like, 100 times, right? Excuse me. They should have a script. I mean, potentially. Depending on, how does one clean out for butt stuff like a douche? I'd like to try things with my boyfriend, but I'd like to do some cleaning and not sure exactly what to do. So I will give, I've been literally thinking about doing a video on this for like years and I just haven't gotten around to it. But here's my opinion on what to do for anal, okay? There's definitely very different standards in the heterosexual, pansexual world versus the gay men's community. My personal line is, if you randomly ask me to do butt stuff one night, you're not allowed to have any expectations, okay? If randomly in the moment you're suddenly like, let's do anal, all bets are off, all right? You get whatever is going on, okay? That's part of the, I can't control my body. I'm not going to live every day of my life as though I could have anal at any time. That's just not, that is not the way that I roll. I'm sorry. But if you do want to plan stuff out in advance and you are like, okay, this weekend we're going to do butt stuff, okay? I would say preparing for anal penetration for it to be comfortable is more important than like, it being perfectly clean, okay? Because that's probably not, like, unless you're doing something very intense, like, in terms of a cleaning regimen, it's probably not going to be guaranteed anyways. But I'd wear a graduating series of butt plugs, ideally silicone or glass. Glass is my favorite because I think it's the easiest to clean. It doesn't retain any kind of smell or anything like that. So graduating series of butt plugs. And then I would say, depending on how much time you have, like, hour, half an hour beforehand. I'd probably aim for more like an hour, just like to be on the safe side, because you don't know how long this process is going to take if you haven't done it before. But you can get enema kits. You can get ones that are meant to be used just regular water. Don't use saline, okay? Don't do any of the ones that are meant for like constipation, because that will unlock a whole other world that we're not trying to get into, okay? We're just doing regular plain water. Do like, you're just trying to flush out kind of like the first like 8 inches or so of your not your anal sphincters, your like rectal cavity, I guess, let's say. And you just do an enema. It's like, it seems intimidating. You haven't done it before. I always think of the movie Sybil whenever I do an enema. It's like very mentally unpleasant. Like, it just makes you think of the movie Sybil, which if you've seen the movie Sybil, you know what I'm talking about. I'm sure some people like to role play doing that, but that's not my kink. It is, you know, 1, maybe 2 flush outs doing that, and then you're good to go. Make sure, the people skip this part, make sure your butt is properly moisturized, okay? If you haven't been hydrating, if you're really dry, it's going to be more painful, so make sure you're properly lubricating everything. I actually recommended earlier, the CeraVe healing ointment. Having a separate tube for that, just to make sure the outside of your butt is nice and moisturized, will also make things a lot easier. But if you're going to be wearing condoms, I would not wear that like the day of, just because that the mineral oil in it can degrade condoms. But you know, as a prep beforehand, just to make sure you're not like, I feel like when your skin's really dry, it's like just hard overall to do things. So like, you know, just go in moisturize, you know what I mean? But yeah, cleaning out is usually like, when people say that, what they are referring to are enemas. People do like more intense enemas with like a shower attachment, but I recommend just getting a little bulb and doing it that way. You know, if you're doing fisting, you're doing more intense anal play, the more cleaning ahead of time is required. But also, that's why we wear condoms. And that's why we understand before we get into things, if when you're doing anal, you have to / you expect everything to be perfectly clean, in my opinion, you probably shouldn't be doing anal. Like, it's like, I think you need to be aware that that's like a possibility, you know? It's like, things happen sometimes. It's part of the equation. You got to be able to roll with that if you want to engage in anal. Again, in my opinion. Oh yeah. Comes into the water, comes out clear. Yeah, that's a good guidepost for it. Yeah. Yes, actually there is an older What's a Safe Word video about this too. Yeah. But then like, I also don't believe in like using like Imodium or things like that. It's not like part of my like routine anal prep process. And again, like if you're randomly expecting anal sex to happen and you're like, hey, let's do this right now, it's like, you gotta warn me ahead of time. Like, I'm just gonna pause everything to do an enema for like an hour, right? That's not gonna happen. Thank you for the suggestions. I wouldn't have thought about hydration. Yeah, definitely the hydration and staying moisturized is important. Because your butt is not self-lubricating. We're not in Omegaverse fix, so you gotta take care of that. I'm not gonna lie, I feel kind of sorry for AFAB butt players. The prostate is a magic button. That's true. If you are AFAB, you probably, don't have a prostate. You could be intersex and secretly have a prostate, I suppose, but that's very rare. I would say, I can't speak to like what other people's experiences are with anal if you're AFAB, but there are definitely positions and ways to do it that like can feel very pleasurable. Like it's not like having a prostate levels of pleasurable as I understand it to be, like quite motivating and powerful, but like it can be enjoyable, and like you got all the other stuff free. You can use a vibrator. There's ways to make it more interesting for the person with the vagina if for some reason they don't necessarily like anal by itself. Yeah, definitely ways to work around that. Don't go into the poop's house and be offended when he's home. That is like the most ridiculous way of saying that ever, but like it's also like, yeah, exactly. It's like, if I go to the bear's house, I can't be upset that the bear is at home. Oh my God, there's a bear here. Well, what did you think was gonna happen? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can definitely feel like the muscle stimulation. I definitely had that happen too, where it's like, oh no, is something going to happen? And it's like, it's just the muscles getting stimulated. Because that's like your body, fun fact, not designed to do anal sex. So when you have something hanging out around in the butt stimulating your muscles, your body interprets that as like, oh, what's happening? What are we trying to do? Like, it's very confusing for your body, and your brain will probably interpret those signals in conflicting ways, shall we say. Butt plugs are awesome for both partners. I think butt plugs can be really fun. Yeah, I think if you're going to experiment with anything, I'd definitely start with butt plugs before doing any kind of further anal play for sure. But, it depends on the person. I know people that are like not into anything involving the butt at all, and that's perfectly fine. I know people who love it, that prefer it over oral or vaginal sex. I'm not one of those people, but some people do also prefer it. So it's the spectrum of human sexuality is, in fact, a spectrum. Oh, you're gonna make cookies. That's delightful. I love it. Alrighty, I'm gonna put some other questions here. Good thoughts though. Wish I had a fireplace. That would be great. Hi, Evie. I wanted to say thank you for all you put out there. I started back on FET and going to Munches years ago, and you've been super helpful. Thank you so much, Shelly. I appreciate that. I'm ready for you to be our pleasure dom tonight. Well, I'm not ready to be anybody's pleasure dom. Let's be honest. Okay. What's the difference between a pleasure dom and a service top? Okay, so here's the deal. Here is the deal. Years ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, I made a video about pleasure doms. That was a standalone video, okay? At the time, I'll admit it, I was a hater. I didn't understand it. I still kind of believe this, okay? My understanding from social media is that pleasure dom is a term that originated on TikTok as a way to describe, most of the time, like 95% of the time, a heterosexual male dom that uses sexual pleasure on their female submissive partners. Like, as though it was some kind of grand revelation that, like, I can be, as a heterosexual man, I actually, despite the fact I don't have to care about this, I actually care about female pleasure. As though that is some kind of fucking award-winning perspective that we should all stand up and clap over. Oh, thank you, Sean. Sean has gifted 5 memberships to the channel. Thank you so much. Yes, ayo, Aaron. Glad you could make it. But yes. So, pleasure dom, the original definition was very loosey-goosey, but essentially it has been used to mean a dominant person Although I would argue a lot of the examples of this are top-bottom relationships that don't actually involve any other levels of power exchange, but some kind of BDSM relationship where the D-type partner is utilizing sexual pleasure as their main tool in their scenes and activities, and that's what they focus on, right? So that could be like, usually it's orgasm control, orgasm torture, orgasm denial, overstimulation, things like that. But again, at the time when I had first interacted with this, all the examples that I had seen of it were essentially just like, isn't it revolutionary and crazy that I, as a man, care about and am able to give my female partners an orgasm? Like, and sometimes even more than once. It's like, whoo. And I just sort of felt like, and the additional level of, that maybe even wasn't necessarily the biggest problem with the terminology as I saw it. It was used as a comparison against doms that didn't include pleasure in their scenes, as though everyone else who wasn't a pleasure dom didn't care about the enjoyment of their partners, right? Oh, I'm a pleasure dom. I'm not a sadist. Oh, I'm a pleasure dom. I'm not like, cold and mean and rude and whatever. And it's like, most BDSM dynamics are like fairly complicated things. Most people are not only into one type of thing ever. And even in scenarios where somebody is like role-playing being a mean person or doing emotional sadomasochism or humiliation or whipping somebody until they cry, pick the flavor of suffering, there's still care within that. There is still a level of consideration of the partner, and it ultimately should be about what is mutually desired by both parties, regardless of how much obvious physical sexual pleasure is happening in the experience itself. So it kind of was used in this negative comparison way that I didn't love as well, where like it was sort of like either there's pleasure doms who are good or there's non-pleasure doms who are bad doms, and like didn't love that. Didn't love inventing a whole new term to be like, wow, I'm special because I do pleasure. But as far as like service topping, I'd say service topping is like a much more general category of service topping is when you are performing a scene or doing a scene for somebody else for the sake of the bottom. Like you get pleasure maybe from the bottom's pleasure, but you're not designing it around your own needs and desires as the primary factor, or even the equal factor. It's primarily designed around whatever the bottom wants to happen. And generally speaking, if you're service topping, you're probably not in a relationship with that person. It's probably more of a pickup play, house topping scenario where you're maybe known for doing a couple of different things. Somebody comes up to you and is like, hey, you're the rope guy. Can I do a rope scene with you? And then they do like a very basic scene where maybe there's this like smaller level of like, I feel like I did community service and that makes me feel good about myself, but there's not maybe emotional depth in that. Whereas like pleasure doming is like that very much like, I don't like that probably could exist in pickup play, but that's generally something I've seen in like, committed long-term heterosexual dynamics. And it isn't necessarily long-term, but definitely like, intimate relationships where the dom is getting what they want out of the experience. And so is the S-type. And that's why they're doing what they're doing. And it's less transactional, I guess I would say. It's less one-sided in terms of whose needs are getting met there. And if it was weighted in any direction, I think it would be more weighted towards the dominant getting what they want. At the same time, though, I do think I think this is something I didn't communicate well in the original video. It is definitely possible to have a DS relationship that is primarily based on using sexual, things as a tool for developing the dynamic. That could anything involving the genitalia, right? From orgasm torture to chastity to, oral training to whatever your flavor of stuff that you like. All of that could be incorporated in that dynamic, including maybe more like CNC type elements. And yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I'm 99% a bottom and mostly service top when topping. Yeah, I think that's also common too. Like if you're a bottom, especially if you're more service oriented, in those times where people top, it tends to be oh, what can I do to make you happy? Like what would bring you pleasure? And I think that's cute and fun, and I'm glad that exists. Because especially for more experienced subs, it tends to be a thing that happens eventually. My fingers are covered in dough and not great for typing. That is why we wear gloves and then wash our hands. They can definitely overlap. I'd say service topping and being a pleasure dom can overlap. Again, I think the way that our sort of like service topic is something that I like see a lot of in the communities I'm part of, and in the places where I have seen it, it's more of a like pick up play at a dungeon, more limited in scope. And like, are there people who service top pleasure doming? And I guess actually that's true, because I guess that would actually be true. I do know somebody that has a fuck saw that they bring to dungeons, and they let people, they don't even necessarily operate it. They just like set up the machine and are like, does anybody and or their partner want to use my machine? And then people get to use it and operate it, but they're not necessarily like doming. They're not even really topping anyone. They're just kind of like showing up with equipment and then being like, here you go, here's a gift. But I could see that maybe being used in a way that would more overlap the two. It is possible. And I would say, actually, I have a video where I talk about dominant archetypes in the next couple of weeks, and I'm really glad that I made it because I had so many ideas. And I think it's a good one. And in that, one of the archetypes I talk about is a hedonistic dominant, and that overlaps with, that's like pleasure doming, and then like, and also some other surrounding things besides just being a pleasure dom. Because I think hedonism is also sort of about doing whatever most fulfills you in the moment at that moment, and that could include like sexual pleasure. It could include other things too, right? It's oftentimes about sex, but it's not only ever just about that too. Excuse me. So many good questions. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. I'm seeing a lot of good questions, but they're not necessarily related to anything I'm talking about at this exact moment. So we're gonna have to get to those later. But yes, the video will be coming out very soon if you want to watch it. Hopefully something in there will fit you, and it would not surprise me at all if a hedonistic dom fit for a number of people. Because like, I don't think like pleasure doming necessarily incorporates like free use or CNC implicitly. I think there's like, again, it's like certainly includes that, but it's more expansive than just that too. But also just because I'm a hater of the way that people use the term pleasure dom, which means I have to make my own label for it. Because I don't want to perpetuate using a label that I feel like I've mostly seen in a negative comparison way that fundamentally misunderstands like why other people, like it has the flavor, like pleasure dom has this flavor of like, I'm not like those other BDSM people. I care about how my partner feels in a scene. And it's like, you know, should just be part of it always. Like even in like a 24/7 MS relationship, there should be a starting basis of, do we both like this thing that we're doing when we're doing it? Call me crazy. Like that, I think that should just be part of it, you know? What about a pleasure dom or a service top in a friends with benefits? In a friends with benefits, like a friends benefit dynamic? I mean, I don't really do that, so you're kind of, you know, barking up the wrong tree if you want my personal opinion about that. Any type of BDSM relationship that you could possibly have is technically possible in a friends with benefit scenario. However, little star there, disclaimer. It's not always easy because of how people approach friends with benefits type relationships. If you're both very clear, if you both know what you want, if you're open to renegotiating as you go along and as feelings develop, it can be a positive thing. But because of the nature of BDSM and because of the different motivations that people have for getting into BDSM, I find that a lot of the time, this is also true in like vanilla friends with benefits dynamics as well. It's either a race to care about each other party the least, right? To avoid attachment. And it's seen as like a game where you try to get as much as you can from the other person without giving up vulnerability yourself. And it's seen as a way of like maintaining that dynamic without accidentally catching feelings, because that would be bad. But because of the nature of what we're doing, it's very difficult to not have some kind of level of feelings. And it's almost sort of like they don't even really want to be friends. They just want to be able to fuck and not have to have any kind of obligation to the other person. And I don't think that's not conducive to having any kind of kink connection. But if you are able to do it correctly, if you can get into a relationship where it's very clear and negotiated, that can be positive. But I also oftentimes see it come out, as I was starting to say, that one party will catch stronger feelings and or would have secretly wanted more emotional connection from the beginning and was willing to accept a friends with benefits dynamic, but ideally wanted something else. And then during the course of the relationship, they expect the other person's feelings to change. And then when they don't, they get resentful, they get upset, and then it just causes more conflict. And they probably both would have been better off trying not to do a friends with benefits dynamic, just because it made everything actually worse in the long term. But that's my external opinion. I don't do friends with benefits dynamics, so your mileage will vary. That's my external observation.
I really like the idea, but my brain still has questions. Like, these are people. What the heck?
Any thoughts? What does it say? On the sub as a toy dynamic or a scene, I really like the idea, but my brain still has questions like, these are people, what the heck is a toy? Oh, like treating somebody like a toy? It's sort of like in the dollification sense of being like a toy. Or I guess they could be like a toy dog. There's always an option. I think if you're doing it in a scene, it's obviously just like a role play thing where it's like, I'm going to role play being a doll or being a toy, and I have a maker or I have a keeper that, owns me and manipulates my body. And like, it's a very high level of role play that not a lot of people are able to do because it requires a greater degree of suspension of disbelief than like believing somebody's a skull remade when they're in a maid outfit, right? So it's definitely possible. And I think to a certain extent, I think part of the reason why people enjoy doing it is because it's a way of removing the humanity of the participants involved, or at least the toy, because you're not a human, you're a doll. In the same way, it's like, well, I'm not a human, I'm a pet. Well, I'm not, on the list, right? Whatever flavor of role play that you're doing that involves non-human positions or creatures, whatever it is you're playing as. And I think that's part of the appeal, is like, I get to not be a human, and then I get to see my partner in this like radically different way that is very different than the dynamic that I would have with like, a real human being. And it gives you this space to play with a deeper level of role play than maybe you could get to if it was a more traditional MS type dynamic. I personally really like, toy doll type stuff. I think it's an underutilized framework for role playing for a DS relationship as well. And if you're into objectification or degradation, I think it works really well for that as well. Like if you want to feel less than human, subhuman, if you want to feel like you're a kept object, being a doll or a toy is a really good way of doing that. Yeah. Not in the dollification sense, but in the take you off the shelf, have some fun, put you back. Well, I guess I was like, to me, it kind of still sounds like describing dollification, unless you mean in the metaphorical sense of like, I'm metaphorically taking you off of the shelf, having some fun, and then putting you back. As in, you're being treated like a toy, and outside of the scenes that we're doing, we're not having an emotional connection. Like I'm not having any obligations towards you. We are, separate other than those moments where I just use you and then put you back. I think if it's more in the I'm being used and not treated as opposed to like a role play thing, again, it's one of those things. It's definitely an edgier type of dynamic in that it requires the person who is being the toy to be very attuned to what they want and why they want it. As we talked about earlier on the stream, it's about understanding your motivations, right? Are you doing this because you don't believe you're worthy of a loving relationship and that you want to be treated like garbage because it feels like it's, how you deserve to be treated because you're a terrible person and you're ugly and you're disgusting and no one will really love you? Or are you doing it because it's fun and maybe this is a framework where like you want to be a slutty slut and like being a toy is a way that you can access that headspace to be able to do that and feel comfortable, or it gives you a role play context for like being treated like a toy and getting to let out that energy in a way that feels positive for you as one example of that. There's many other reasons for why somebody might want to be in that space. But, for the people that I think have more that flavor of toy dynamic, I think they're probably people that have a very high sex drive, but are very emotionally independent and like don't really want or need committed romantic connections or emotional connections with the people they're playing with. And so the easiest way to do that is just to sort of like get tossed around for a bit and then, put away when they're done with you. And then like you get your sexual needs met, but then you don't necessarily have the obligations of a dating relationship that go along with that, which for some people, like for me, that would be a nightmare. Like, oh my, can't think of anything worse. But for other people, they're like, oh my God, thank God I can have the sex without having to have an actual boyfriend. Like, thank goodness, Yeah, okay, maybe it is a dollification thing, but I don't need them to dress up or look a certain way. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, I think it's like, with pet play or littles or anything like that, there's definitely a more commonly seen version of it where because it's visually different, you can identify as, oh, that's pet play, oh, that's a little, oh, that's a doll. And you can do that in a way where there is lots of role play and dress up and makeup and, all the whole 9 yards. That's what you want. But I think if you're just role playing is like being a doll, that could be anything from like, you literally have like preset speeches. Like you only have like, you're a doll, so you only have like 4 different things you can randomly say if you get like, pressed in a certain spot or whatever. All the way over to like, you're maybe acting like a doll, but maybe you're more like a, I don't know, like a Chobits. I think that's the example I used in my video on dollification was like, you're like more of a Chobits type situation where you have more autonomous language. You can dress in different outfits. You don't necessarily have to, maybe outside of maybe 1 or 2 very specific things. You don't necessarily have to have the whole full extension of the possibilities of dollification to be doing it. You can do pet play or any other kind of role play with no special gear, nothing like that, just all, theater of the mind type approach, as opposed to like, I think dress up dolls is like one popular way of doing, because a lot of people that are attracted to dollification like the idea of, I like having a doll that I can dress up and make look pretty and do makeup the way that I want and wear pretty things that I buy them and all of that. But other people are just like, do you like it for the dress up reasons, for the having a mindless object that you could do whatever you want with, just again, the motivations things. I like that permission to be slutty, even though you really don't need permission at all. Well, yeah, I mean, there's like, brains be complicated, and even if we logically understand that, like, I don't, like, you might morally believe yourself in your values that it's, fine to have casual sex and it's fine to have sex with lots of people, but we may not always be fully comfortable with that, and kink allows us a way to do that in an easier fashion. Also, necessarily not want any relationship, but some freedom to not do a traditional relationship thing. Yeah, very true. I mean, there's always like, we talked about friends with benefits, right? Like there's always, there's more than just like committed, long-term, constantly talking relationship and single, right? There's a lot between those two things. And it's about finding what works for you. I was thinking Chobits during this doll discussion the entire time. I mean, Chobits is such a good example for dollification, really. It's like, it's so easy to point to. Oh, I'm very sorry, Mara. Mara said, I'm not going to read the whole thing because I don't know if you want me to read it out, but disowned by my ex-dom after 6 years this past week, all because I tried telling him my reasoning for why you didn't like, there was some activity that you didn't like that he was doing. Well, that sucks, and I'm very sorry. My inclination is like, if they couldn't respect that boundary that you had, I'm really glad that you stuck up for it, because especially with that, what you talked about, that is a very big boundary. And if a person can't respect that, or they, I don't know, need to be able to do it regardless of how you feel about it, that's not great. It's not good. But it's fucking sucks. Like, losing a long-term DS relationship is incredibly, incredibly painful. And what has gotten me through that in the past, if maybe you're hoping for some advice on that front, though if you're not, then don't worry about it. I mean, a lot of this happened during the pandemic, so there was also like, things were shut down and I moved to a new place and it was a whole deal. But really what got me through it was I definitely took a lot of time to myself. I focused on understanding what I really wanted from relationships, what I would want independent of what I thought my partner wanted, and getting to build a new beautiful place to be in, a place that I felt comfortable being in, enjoying being out in nature, getting to do my hobbies that I enjoyed doing that I had stopped doing because of my partner, and them not, how do I say that? Like them not necessarily participating in those hobbies, or like my obligations to them, meaning I didn't necessarily have time to do those hobbies. And being in my community, being amongst friends, definitely. If you have a social network that you can lean on, that's also very important too. Yeah. All right, but I'm wishing you the best. That is, it's gonna take a while. Eventually, though, it will maybe not always be easy, but it will get better. And it's like sometimes it's hard to think about things, being better in the future, and like genuinely, every time that I have gone through a very big breakup, that at the time immediately either thinking about doing it or after I did the breakup, I always felt like I'm never going to find anyone like this again. This is awful. My life is over. And then when I was ready for it, I would always find better relationships every single damn time. But I always find something that was like better than what came before it. And like, now I'm in a place in my life where if I didn't go through those breakups, I feel like I would have been very stunted in my personal growth. And I also would have been very caged in terms of like what I could expect from relationships. And now I feel very like positive about all the dynamics that I'm in. And like I couldn't get to that place if I had stayed in relationships that weren't working for me. Yeah, well, wishing you the best, Mara. Hope things go okay. Definitely be patient with yourself. Don't beat yourself up. I know people like, oh, it should only take you this long to get over it. It's, everyone's different. Every breakup is different. Don't judge yourself too much. Okay. Alrighty. I don't know if I should try dating apps when I get into dating again. I want to be on T for a bit before I do. Fair. I want to find other A-spec people, and I'm not interested in dating men. Should I? Okay. I want to be on T for a bit. Not interested in dating men. Should I? So finding other A-spec people on dating apps is a time. It is definitely a time. It is possible. I have not found too many other A-spec people on dating apps. What I will say is definitely don't go on Tinder. Don't go on Tinder. Bumble's very conservative. I would probably not go on that one. Okay, Cupid might be your best bet. And if you definitely don't want to see men, you might have options on her, but on pretty much any dating app you go on, the menses have infiltrated it. So I don't know if there's anything maybe more specific, if it's like a T for T type dating app, or dating apps that are more trans inclusive. I think Grindr people use a lot, but Grindr scares me, and as an A-spec person, again, I say Grindr scares me. So I'm not sure what I'd recommend in that case, but I think it's, there's no harm in trying. If you decide you want to try it, like I'd say usually the first week you try a new dating app is the most successful for meeting people. So I'd probably recommend, trying out an app or two for like a week, see how you like it or not. And then if you don't like it, it doesn't work out for you, delete the apps, and then don't worry about it and meet people the old-fashioned way. Dating apps never worked for me. My only success has been Munches, FetLife, and once Reddit. Oh, that's Reddit. Interesting. I do know people meet on Reddit. There is I don't know if there is still anymore, but there used to be a BDSM, like a dating subreddit. Is that still around? I'm going to check. I'm checking. That was I haven't heard that in forever. Okay, what is this? Let's see. The BDSM personals. Oh, it is still around. Yeah, r/BDSM personals. I don't know if it's still active. Is it? It is. Oh my goodness, it is very active, actually. So many people. I'm scared. I'm intrigued, but I'm scared. I'm like, oh, what type of people are attracted to dating via Reddit? They're Redditors, so mixed bag, mixed much. Listen, I know people are like, oh my god, Reddit's terrible. I think Reddit is fine. I think it totally depends on what communities you're in. I think Reddit can be a perfectly fine place, you know? It's a popular one. Okay, apparently, yeah, r/BDSM personal. The more you know. I should consider that more in my options when I talk about dating opportunities for kink, because that is one, and I definitely know people who've met on there. They're all really into hypnosis. It's like different couples, all of them into hypnosis. Find people through Reddit, I guess. I think I talked about the dating older men one already. So the BDSM community is why I have had a channel for almost a year. Not a single person has sent me a lewd message or a dick pic. BDSM community equal respectful. Yes, for the most part. No, it's a mixed bag. If you go on FetLife or other websites, you will definitely get people who will send you inappropriate content. What does everyone like to throw? This is the best question. What does everyone like to throw on the grill? Oh, we're grilling now. I've discovered sweet potato planks on my new grill. Yum. I believe the best thing to grill, and this is very, very girly pop, very, of course, is pineapple. I don't think anything's going to top grilled pineapple, TBH. Unless you're like doing a smoked meats like a, like a Zuckerberg. Let's smoke some meats. You're going to... I hate him so much, but it's so, the fucking grilling meats is so funny. Okay. Get it together, girl. You're talking about pineapple. All right. Pineapple's really good. Mushrooms, a good mushroom. If you like portobello mushrooms, those are pretty good in the grill. But I feel like pineapple is just like magical in the grill. A blistered red pepper, very good in the grill. Very good, especially before you chop it up, add it to something else. Pureed even. It's a good one. Good option. Some places are fun. Some are blighted beyond repair. That is the dynamic of the current dead internet, is it not? Yeah. Grilled fruit is effing delicious. Yeah, I haven't had too much outside of pineapple, like in like grilled stone fruits. Like I haven't done like plums or things like that. I'd love to try it though. I just don't have regular access to a grill. If I have fruit, I usually make it into jam, to be honest with you. Like if I have that much fruit, grilling is not top of mind. Corn. Oh my god, corn. How could I forget about corn? Corn is so good grilled. Yeah, absolutely. Never had grilled watermelon. It has so much water in it that like, how do you like, does it just like, I feel like it would just shrivel up, you know? I know, she's so good at like staying on camera and also very good at being a loaf. Oh, peaches are very good. Yeah, grilled peaches and some homemade vanilla ice cream. That is one of life's pleasures, truly. Now we're all just talking about grilling stuff. I don't grill, I bake. My favorite thing to bake is tomatoes. Just cook it whole, no seasoning required. Just eat it like an apple. The chefiest of kisses. I never had an unseasoned, before when I was vegetarian, one of the dishes I would make with my roommates in college was we would make baked eggs in ramekins, and we would do like tomatoes and eggs and cheese, and that was very good. Never had grilled mango either. Never had grilled mango. I'm clearly not sophisticated enough. I haven't tried enough grilling. I need a grill daddy in my life, apparently. Now taking applications. I'll go on Reddit. I'll go to r/BDSM personals, and I'll go, Portland area, 30 female, submissive, looking for a grill daddy. And then just underneath that, I'll put like, really only looking for somebody to grill with this summer. Nothing else. Thank you very much. FYI, I'm polyamorous. Like just... Oh, God. So no, maybe I'll bring him in like a grill apron or something as a gift, you know. Grilled tofu would be fun to try too. I'd try grilled tofu. I feel like that would just be all sear, and then you'd have to add the flavor later on, but I think that could also be really good. We contain multitudes. We truly do. We're both grilling, and we're also talking about BDSM and dating apps. And this is the live stream. This is what this is. This is what we do, folks. This is what we do here. Does estrogen? Okay, wait. Question. Pause. Timeout. Estrogen. I don't know where this is coming from. I guess pun intended. Not really. I said it and then I realized it was also a pun. Estrogen makes cum taste great. Clarify. Does it taking estrogen make cum taste better to the, like, if you are on estrogen, do you suddenly find cum to be more appetizing? Or if the person who's giving you the cum is on estrogen, does their cum taste better because they're on estrogen? Or is it both? My theory is it depends on what you eat. And I'm sorry, I'm going to be vegan for like 2 seconds, okay? If you want your cum to taste good, become a vegan. I'm so serious. I'm so effing serious right now. There is a distinct difference in the cum quality of somebody who like is a regular coffee drinker, eats red meat all the time, like traditional American diet, and then like vegan. There is a world of difference that I could only assign to the veganism and nothing else. They also drink coffee. The people I'm thinking of, they still drink coffee, okay? Still drink coffee. Don't necessarily have the world's healthiest diet, but they are vegan. And I swear to God, it makes a difference. Swear to God. All right, that's my vegan time over. Oh, estrogen taken by the person with the penis. Oh, interesting. Just advertising estrogen. It's like, hey boys, do you want your cum to taste better? Try E. Like, oh God. Wait a second. What if we preserve access to estrogen in this country by marketing it as a male sexual enhancement supplement? Think about it. It could work. The Republicans love gas station boner pills. They love gas station boner pills and they love Viagra, okay? If we told them, well, maybe they don't care about their cum tasting good because that would require having empathy for the person receiving the cum. But maybe they do care enough to be like, this is about me being a better lover, so therefore let me preserve it. It's a galaxy brain play. Listen, I'm trying my best here. I'm trying to figure out how to make this work. You joke, but they'll love that. I mean, and then when they're on the estrogen, they'll start feeling more emotions, and they'll be like, "Oh, I have empathy for the experience of women," and then it'll solve everything. We have a plan. We found a way to appeal to the conservatives. Yes, finally. This will become a TikTok trend, guaranteed. Yeah. We just gotta get him into femboy stuff, and then we gotta get him on estrogen. And then everything will be fine. Oh, God. It would certainly make estrogen more available, wouldn't it? I tried my ex's estrogen for a week. I seriously didn't. It did enhance my orgasms. The female orgasm is nuts. Stop because I didn't want boobs though. That's the emotional range of oof. Yeah. Yeah, the emotional range is both delightful and horrifying, I'm sure, for people that are not used to experiencing it. Like, I had a day this week where I woke up and I cried, and then I read a book, and then I happy cried, and then something else happened later, and then I sad cried, and then this was after I had my period, by the way. This was not a premenstrual thing. This was like this was like 3 days, like post period, like nothing should be happening. Just woke up, cried, did some other stuff, cried, did some more stuff, cried again, felt happy for a while, cried again, felt happy again, cried again. And that was my day. Like, it's not great. Not a great experience all the time. I'm on a ride. Everyone else around me is on a ride. It's, you know what, plus and minuses for sure. It is a flawless plan. I don't see any issues with it. I think it'll work. Yeah, I think it'll work. Yeah, make me the head of the FDA. I will make this happen. It's a nice idea, but a lot of men do not respond well to estrogens at all. Oh, like if you were a cis man and you were taking it, it would be like too feminizing? Or do you mean that like there's side effects from the estrogen that even if you want those other things that come from estrogen, it would be like very, very bad? Oh, we do already have estrogen, topical estrogen for menopausal women. So like we do already have that to a certain degree. But the problem with trad wives is they're anti-medicine. They don't like any kind of medicine for any reason at all. It could be an Advil, it could be estrogen, it could be anesthetic for surgery. It doesn't matter, okay? They want a raw dog life in every possible way imaginable, including the literal meaning of raw dogging. And they don't care if they live or die because they're going to go to heaven and that's better than earth. So who gives a shit? That's like their whole philosophy. And if they die doing what they believe in, it's because they're a martyr and God wanted to take them back to heaven, you know? To be honest, that week just totally explained women to me. The cycle would drive me crazy. Yeah, it's like, I've had people tell me before, it's like, oh, women are always talking to you about their hormones. It's like you don't feel like you're in control of your own body sometimes. Like, it sucks. Like, you're just like, something's happening to me and I can't do anything about it because, like, my body's doing fucking this for no reason. Like, calm down. That's how I feel about it. Anyways, I'm yelling. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to yell. It's a natural hormone. It's not an artificial chemical. Well, tell that to them because it's exogenous. They're like, estrogen comes from, I don't even know where we actually get estrogen from. I don't know if it's entirely synthetic or it's synthesized from something. I don't know. But they'd make some shit up about how estrogen is from fetal tissue. And like, I don't know. They'd come up with something real wacky to be like, and that's why you shouldn't take estrogen to make your cum taste better. Like they would come up with something like that. They would, if you sold it to them as pregnant mare's urine, they would do that. If their pastor was like, I have a pregnant mare, and if you drink a diluted amount of her urine every day, it'll make you more fertile, they would be selling that by the gallon, by the truckload. People would be lining up. It would be very uncomfortable. It would be borderline bestiality. Possibly actual bestiality. It would be bad. Like, they'd be like, oh, finally, another way to fulfill my biblical purpose. And they'd pray about it, and they'd ask God to show them a way. And conveniently, God only shows them the things they already kind of wanted to do. Weird how that works. But God doesn't tell them to take the Aleve when they have a migraine. God tells them to drink the pregnant mare's urine, though. It's almost like God's a voice in your head. I don't know. Kind of weird. Yeah, it was harvested from red meat. Yeah, it's from organ meat. It's from the liver. We get it extracted from the purest cow liver. No hormones, no antibiotics, non-woke cow livers. Exactly. Have you met anyone? Actually, yeah, it can cause ED. Yeah. But frequent ED medicine and frequent masturbation maintains function and size. Oh shit! So you mean you can take estrogen and then you're also supposed to masturbate a lot? Wait a second. That just makes it an even better selling thing. Well, maybe not to conservatives, but like, okay, you have to masturbate while you're on this. So like, get chop, chop. Get to it, soldier. Oh, that woke up Panda. Hi, honey. You're okay. Hi, sweetie. I know I clapped. It's okay. She's looking at me like, why'd you wake me up? I was sleeping. Oh, goodness. But the question I was about to start reading, I'm agnostic. I don't believe humans are able to discern the true nature of the universe and its creation. That's my opinion. Have you ever met anyone who realized they were bisexual in their mid-30s? I feel like I've been repressed a lot. Yes, I definitely know people that have not come to terms with either their gender identity or their sexual orientation until 30s, 40s, 50s. Like, our brains happen on their own time. And, like, especially if you were raised in, like, a cult or, like, super highly religious or anything like that, it can take longer to get through it, especially if you were like super religious and you got married really young and then you were in like a conservative marriage for like the first 10 years of your adulthood and then you left and then you had to decompress from that and then you had to be independent. Then you had to have space and time to think about how you actually believe the world operates and like what's moral and right. And then suddenly at 35, then you're like, oh shit, I might actually be bisexual. Like, it takes time to get there. That's acceptable. That's normal. It happens. And I'd also say it's not even necessarily just that you may have realized that you are bisexual. I also believe that sexual orientation can be a fluid thing. It is not fluid for everyone. Some people are like the same way all the time, their whole lives, and that's just who they are through and through. For other people, though, a big part of their experience is like their sexuality is fluid. It changes over time. And like, it could have also been the case that like option A, you were bisexual the whole time and you didn't realize it until later because of repression and guilt and shame. Option 2, you weren't bisexual. Things happened, brain changes, feelings change, now bisexual. And both your previous identity and your current identity and understanding of your orientation are valid. And I think a lot of people kind of like beat themselves up for discovering things like too late or like changing how they identify, like they didn't understand themselves well before. And I really do believe that because sexuality can be fluid, because humans are weird, brains are weird, things happen, and this is one of the downsides of portraying in defense of sexual orientations and sexual minorities. We portray it as this one clear, firm thing that never ever changes. And if it does ever change, that means that you misunderstood yourself or you were wrong or whatever. In reality, though, it's not just like, oh, they can't help it that you're gay and like, therefore that means we shouldn't be discriminated against you because you can't help it and you've always been gay. Like, you can be bisexual, and that was true for you at the moment. And then at a different point in time, you can be gay. And that can also be true for you. And that's also totally acceptable. Or you can be heterosexual and then discover you're bisexual or whatever. It's all weird and like it's your own personal journey and nobody else's, in my opinion. In my opinion. All right. I'll see you later, Lexi. Goodbye. Have a good night. Yeah, and especially if you're like bisexual or pansexual, like you might lean more towards one side or part of that attraction sometimes versus others. Like you might go through time periods where you're like more actively pursuing you're attracted to one gender and then the other. And like, again, it's all variable. It all changes. But you definitely have not missed the boat. And like, there's a lot of people who like get, you know, into a heterosexual marriage at like 18, 19, 20, and then they're in that heterosexual marriage for 10 years and they get out when they're like 21, 22. And then when they're ready to date again, they're like, oh, I'm bisexual. And so they don't even start dating people of the same gender as them until they're like in their mid 30s. That's super normal. Super normal. The gender messy zone is a perfectly acceptable place to be. Both the gender and the sexual orientation messiness is, I think we have discomfort being in that messiness, but it is, I think, a worthwhile process to be able to sit in that messiness regardless. I'm definitely one of those people coming to the gender exploration party late, but I recently met someone who was really excited to explore that with me in some kinky ways. Ooh, that's exciting. Always fun to have a partner that can reinforce things and explore that with you. Absolutely. As someone who feels their identity is flexible and often feels like I have a choice in the matter, I'm really thankful to hear that acknowledged. Yes, you're very welcome. It's like, you know, I don't know. I have kind of the same opinion about religion as I do with, you know, orientation and gender and sexuality and all of that. It's like, you know, like how, like, why would we ever think that we understand all that there is to understand with our current way of explaining things right now. Like we have limitations in our language, in our technology, in the way we think about ourselves and express ourselves. Like there's always opportunities to expand and explore more. So there's like kind of no way that it can't be more expansive than what we currently understand it to be, in my opinion. Okay. All right. I'm going to move on to another question here. I don't know. We somehow got from grilling to estrogen to I don't even know what. To be honest, that was a wild ride. You never know where grilling pineapples is going to take you. She is always dreaming. She's very cute when she dreams too. Being in the same place in life is way more important. The one big age gap relationship that I had, I wasn't paying attention to that and should have. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Like with age gaps, like and like honestly, I think that's why sometimes age gap relationships can work, is like if you have someone who's older that like is behind on where their peers are at for what they would want to have in life. Because, you know, maybe they went to prison, they like were finishing school, they like were a doctor, and so they're kind of just like behind on like the relationship timeline compared to other people. Versus a young person who's like maybe ready for other things like right now, I think, you know, that's an important factor to consider. And I think people like, you know, people can be kind of mean. Like there's a phrase that people will say that I'm not a huge fan of, where they'll talk about age gap relationships, where they're like, well, you know, the reason they're dating somebody your age is because all the women, this is mostly directed towards men. I don't really see the opposite happen. Maybe it does somewhere, but like, I don't really see it. People will say like, oh, you know, well, the reason why that guy's into you, the reason why they're pursuing you is because they couldn't get a woman their own age, because all the women their age know that they're lame and stupid. And it's like, that is very simplistic, first of all, and also not necessarily true. Like, just what? Like, that's all I have to say about it. Just what? Like, it's ridiculous enough to where I can scarcely form a thought around it, to be honest. It's very hateful, and it's like a comforting thought to be like, oh, I know why this is happening in all cases, and this is why it's always bad, when that's like, it's always more complex than that. I love grilled estrogen. I mean, isn't that just what soy? Isn't that what tofu is? According to the far right, maybe. There's some estrogen on the grill. Meatless Mondays. That's what Meatless Mondays are all about. Taking your estrogen. Oh God. Oh, I went to my first polyamorous munch a few years ago and was surprised to find kids there. Is that problematic? I gotta be honest with you, I don't associate with like vanilla polyamorous people. I don't know what they're on about. I don't know what their deal is. Kind of seems like a problematic thing to me. If it's a kink munch, absolutely that should not be happening. If it's a polyamorous munch, what the fuck do vanilla poly people talk about? Ugh, probably the same thing as vanilla people. Oh, they probably like the football game. Board games. They talk about board games. They talk about board games, and they talk about D&D campaigns and the new Zelda game, and like just I don't know. It just I don't want to. It's giving me pain thinking about it. I mean, the pain. That's all I can say. Like in a kink setting, absolutely not. I think there's potentially not a public munch where random people can just show up and talk about whatever. I think there is a way to do a kinky meetup with kinky people when you have kids in your families, where you maybe like met in the kink community, you've known each other from that, you're in those social circles, but you meet in a non-kinky context to talk about non-kinky things, to have non-kinky family time around people that just also happen to understand and respect the fact that you have like an MS relationship, right? I think that's like a thing you can do with some degree of safety and not be like violating children's well-being and autonomy. With a polyamorous munch, because I don't know what they're like, because I haven't been to just a vanilla polyamorous munch before, my inclination is to be like, it's probably more likely than not that that's kind of weird, but I also like don't necessarily see it as like entirely a bad thing in the way that I might see that with like a kinky munch, because like if you're at a polyamorous munch, maybe you just stay away from like, you know, sexual adult topics and you just stick to hanging out, and it's more of like you know, like you know, when you have a house party and you have, you know, the adults are all hanging out in the adult space and the kids are with amongst themselves, and like I'm sure at like house parties with like, you know, the company Christmas party, or you know, the neighborhood Christmas party where all the adults are drinking and getting hammered, like because they can just walk home and have to drive, like, you know, the adults are probably having some degree of adult conversation in those settings around kids, and like no one thinks twice about it. Oh, you know, John's hammered and he's talking about how much he loves pegging again. Like no one talks about that, because it's like, I mean, maybe they talk about the pegging thing because whoa, but like they're not going to be like, oh, the children, John, how could you? Like they're, you know, they're not going to, you know, report you necessarily. They wouldn't think about that. They'd just be like, oh well, adults are having adult conversation and the kids are off doing their own thing, so who cares? So maybe if it's more like that, but there's a difference between that, where like sort of they're there in the same space, you know, the adult table versus the kids table at Thanksgiving, versus like, you know, somebody has like a 5-year-old sitting next to them at the munch table between a bunch of adults where they're having an adult conversation involving the child directly interfacing with that conversation. Does that make sense how those things are different? I said that as like talking about D&D. I like tabletop D&D, don't get me wrong. I just feel like a bunch of vanilla polyamorous people talking about D&D would drive me fucking crazy. Like, it's different when you're in your own group, you know? If you're in your own group of people, because I don't like it, for me it has to be the intersection of kinky and polyamorous. Just regular polyamorous people, I don't have enough in common with to like get along with particularly well, and so like the idea of having to converse with them about their fucking D&D campaign makes me want to like cut my own eyeballs out. But if I was in a kinky setting with kinky people and talking about D&D, I'd be like happy about that. That'd be fine. It's contextual is what I'm saying. It's not an absolute statement about D&D. It is an absolute statement about board games though. Holy shit. That is like top of the line, number one important thing I need to know about us in a relationship is, do we agree about board games? And if you expect me to play board games, especially in a fucking group setting, we're doing a CNC type situation at that point. If you're making me play a competitive board game with other adult human beings, you either have to be paying me or it has to be some kind of relationship dynamic that's happening. We have to be doing some kind of consensual CNC thing at that point. Which is consensual is implied by the C in that, but whatever. Yeah. I know, I triggered half the chat. Yeah, I realized when I said it, I was like, oh, it sounds like I'm talking about all of D&D. But what I mean is like normie people talking about D&D and like how annoying I would find that because of them talking about it and not because of like the thing itself, if that makes sense. Yeah, exactly. If they're talking about their own campaign that they're in and I'm not in it, it's like, congrats. That sounds really cool. Like, it's never, unless you're all doing D&D campaigns and unless you're all doing D&D campaigns and you're swapping stories, it's like, what do I say? That's not a great conversation starter, actually, unless, whatever. IME, the worst is cooperative board games. My ex was a very poor loser, so if I made suboptimal moves, they'd be upset with me. That's crazy. I actually, like, if I'm going to be playing a board game, it has to be a cooperative board game. I like feeling like I'm doing a team building thing with people where, like, we're working together and we're getting to know each other and it's, like, silly and lighthearted. Like, a cutthroat, competitive 1v1v1v1, the board game is, like, terrifying to me. I don't want to. People are too competitive. They take losing and winning too seriously. It's never fun. It just is like awful. It's just not fun. I just never been good. Don't have good memories associated with it. Not a fun time for me. Sorry. But I think I don't know. It just depends on the people involved, as usual. There's always nuance in that. Was in an age gap relationship. She was early 20s and I was late 20s, but we were in completely different places. And over time, I just saw her more as someone was babysitting, I was babysitting than a partner, which killed it. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that'll kill it. Yeah, it's weird. I've been actually in the same position, but from the opposite direction, where I was the younger partner, but I felt like I was like caretaking for my older partner in a way that like extended into like, oh, they actually just like can't do this for themselves. Like I have to take care of them like a literal child. And this isn't like a fun, sexy service sub dynamic where it's being recognized and like it's positive and happy. Like, no, this is like, I feel like I have to take care of their life because they are incapable of taking care of it for themselves. And that was like lost all respect for them, honestly. Good point. Yeah, as an older progressive queer, it's much more common to find people with the same values in younger generations. Good point. Yeah, because then depending on what age range you're in, you may not have as many people for, I don't know, like the AIDS, like the AIDS epidemic maybe. Could have potentially gotten in the way of that. My sister-in-law gets surprisingly competitive with Clue. Wow. I don't even think I've even played Clue in like 15, 20 years maybe. It's been a minute. I saw 4 brothers almost destroy each other over competitive Monopoly. Like, it's not that serious. Yeah. I've been at parties where they've done like Mario Party and it's been like fucking bad. Like, everyone has to be on the same page about how competitive it is. Like, we all have to agree we're not taking it that seriously or it's not going to be a fun time. I fall into that caretaker role in relationships a lot. I'm trying to get better at this. Yeah, it's about setting boundaries. Excuse me. It's about setting boundaries with yourself of like what you're comfortable with, how far you are willing to go in a partner, and then like how do you know when you've gone past that point? Like before you get into a relationship with a new person, ideally, so that way you're not, potentially liable to switch what your standards are based on what you think the other person wants you to say or think or do. Set for yourself what your boundaries for caretaking are, and then try to figure out some kind of way where you can tell if it's going too far so you can nip it in the bud and either stop right there and have a conversation about it and try to change it or, pull back on the relationship. Would you say neurotypicals are in the minority of the kink scene? A recent poll I posted on FetLife showed like 80+% neurospicy folk. Well, you also are on the internet, and I feel like anytime you're surveying the internet, there's going to be way more neurodivergent people. It's definitely disproportionate compared to the general population, but I think it depends on what subsection of the BDSM community you're looking at. Because if you're looking on like FetLife users versus people who attend Munches versus anyone who does any kind of kink but doesn't participate in the general community, you're going to get different answers to that question. I think for people who identify as kinky, regardless of if they participate in the public scene, it's going to be a lot higher, but it's not going to be like the majority. And I think if you're looking at internet users who primarily do BDSM through the internet, it's going to be majority people who are not neurotypical. So that's probably how I would look at it, but it's hard to say. Ooh, yeah, the loop earplugs. That's a good, because of the jizz. Yeah. Loop earplugs are good for so many reasons, but yeah, the head bag would be a nice one. Good addition. If you can get a leather one, they're really good at muffling sound. Oh, it's a Viking/medieval event, so I'm going to throw out Monty Python and the Holy Grail quotes on the regular. Oh, that's brilliant. I love that. That's a great idea. That is a fantastic concept. Ooh, hi Evie. I'm a sex positive ace person. This is from Ezra, and I found myself having a hard time keeping my head in the scene and lasting long enough to enjoy it. Any suggestions? Oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that, Ezra. So having a hard time keeping your head in the scene. So while you're playing and lasting long enough to enjoy it. Keeping your head in the scene. I'm trying to figure out if lasting long enough to enjoy it is like a euphemism for something. And I don't think that it is. I'm going to assume that it's not unless somebody tells me something to the contrary. I don't know if Ezra's still in the chat or not. But I'm going to answer it anyways, but we'll see if we can get any feedback on that. Keeping your head in the scene. So I'm going to assume that's probably a combination of internal and external distractions. And around the time when you asked this question in the conversation, we were talking a lot about dealing with external distractions, right? So like visual cues and noises and things that can take you out of the headspace that you're in and into thinking about like, what are these people thinking about me? What's that noise? Why is that so loud? What's that coming from? Blah, blah, blah. And like, there's always going to be a certain level of distraction that happens, and you have to kind of treat it the way that you would in a meditation, right? Because the goal of meditating is not necessarily to have no other thoughts whatsoever, because that's probably not possible, especially not at first, right? But as you're beginning meditation, the idea is to let the thought pass by. Like it's glancing off, it's there, oh, it's a thought, and then you just let it go. You don't ruminate on it, you don't add anything to the thought, you don't try to tell the thought to go away, you don't do anything with it other than just go, oh, and then you just let it go by, and that's it. I think when you're in a BDSM scene, you kind of have to do the same thing with distractions, where you allow yourself to notice a thing is there, but you don't hold on to it. I will say, though, for pain processing reasons, it can actually be a good idea to have either some kind of visual thing you're holding on to, like in the room, or something in your head that you're thinking about. That's a focus. So that could be like if you're in a dungeon, maybe you see like a painting on a wall or a knickknack or something that you're like, ooh, that's really interesting. And you just like stay focused on that. Or if you're in a bed or whatever, you focus on like the corner of a pillowcase, or you're looking at like the rug on the floor or something, depending on where you're positioned, obviously. But find something that's like a visual thing that you can just focus on that. So you're not like eyes wandering around the room looking and see what's going on. You're just focused on that one spot, and that will help you both with pain processing and with staying more aware in the moment, kind of in like sort of a zen-ish sort of fashion, if that makes sense. But I think the main thing is like having that, like actually you might find doing some kind of meditation practice, like not anything super crazy or anything, just like, 5 minutes a day, whatever, just to sort of have that practice of allowing yourself to have those thoughts glance by, as opposed to kind of fixating on each one as it comes by and then like getting distracted by it. And then if you're into anything involving sleep deprivation, isolation, we talked about, blindfolds, hoods, earplugs, noise canceling headphones, on down the list, anything that kind of keeps you just in your body and not whatever else is going on outside of that. But as far as like keeping your head in the scene, I think it's also helpful to come up with like a mantra or something you can kind of replace those thoughts with too, or even just like playing music and getting really into the music of the scene. Like usually what I do, because I tend to keep my eyes closed when I play, is like the scene will be happening, music will be playing, and I'll be focused on my bodily sensations, and then I'll also be focused on the music that's playing. So I'll really be focusing on the lyrics and the beat and like what my partner is doing. And the things that I sort of allow myself to be distracted by are immediately related to the scene that I'm doing, and are not like, I'm not trying to get stuck on like a planning my grocery list for this week. What do I need to pick up at the store? I need bananas. Like, try not to get into that headspace. I mean, that will happen sometimes if you're like not totally in the mood. Like, that can happen. But ideally, it's going to be something where you are focusing in on what's happening around you that's directly related to what it is that you're doing. But it's a hard one. You can also have your partner like check in on you and ask you like prompting questions about like, hey, how are you doing? Where's your head at? And kind of help redirect you into being more in the scene. Like not even just asking questions. They can also like tell you and give you things to think about or talk about. I guess I'm sort of assuming from what you're talking about that you're a bottom, but maybe you're not. But I'm assuming as a bottom that it'll be beneficial if you have a partner that can direct you to like, all right, keep your eyes on me, stay focused on me. I want you to count back from 10. I want you to repeat this phrase to yourself, 20 times in your head, like praying a rosary. Like, you can have like, you can even like, if you want to do religious role play, you can literally be praying a rosary, but your prayers are all dedicated to your partner. Like, you can play with that and give your partner opportunity to be more involved with you, but still help you stay focused. It's not a euphemism. Okay, good. I was just wondering. The British Special Forces are trained to focus on a spot on the wall in front of them and not look anywhere else to deal with torture. I might try that. I mean, if it works for torture victims, it'll work for BDSM. Yeah, I think it can help. I mean, it won't necessarily help you enjoy the experience, but it can definitely be like a coping mechanism for trying to stay, trying to not have your mind wander a million different directions. Yeah. But yeah, it's hard to like stay in the moment. I think it's, if you beat yourself up about it too much, it kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you go, oh no, I'm not focusing enough, I'm failing, and then it kind of goes off the rails that way. So this is, yeah, I think probably the biggest thing I would say is like having something else that you can think of in your head, like that will keep you in yourself. Like I try to think about like describing the sensations to myself, kind of contemplating, the rhythm of what's going on. And that helps me not wander off into like La La Land territory. Bro, why is it always the grocery list? It gets me too. I know. It's the grocery list every time. It's like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I gotta get bananas. I gotta buy tape at the store. I'm out of toilet paper. I'm out of paper towels. Because it's always, the grocery list is always there. Either, unless you just went earlier that day, you're thinking about what you need to get next time. It's always right there. All right, yes, you're very welcome, Ezra. Thank you for asking. You don't need to beat yourself up. Somebody can do that. I mean, actually, though, if you wanted a real solution, if you're into like that kind of play, you could do a scene where you're doing an impact play scene and you're forced to confess to your partner every single time that your mind wanders, and you have to explain to them what your mind is wandering to, and then they have to verbally redirect you back to like staying in the moment, staying focused on them, whatever it is you want them to do. And then like you have to, like, you're kind of playing with the disclosure to keep you in lane, just randomly throughout the scene, every like, without maybe even being able to predict it, they'll just randomly be like, what do you think about right now? And then you have to say what you're thinking about. And if you don't do that, or you pause, or you stutter like you're trying to figure it out, whatever, like, all right, that's 10 more hits or whatever. And then remember, stay focused on my eyes. I'm on top. You'd have to figure out how to implement that yourself, but I feel like that could be a fun one. Maybe help reduce the shame associated with it, if there's any shame there. Ooh, hot chocolate does sound good. I think I explained what a pleasure dom is earlier, so I think I'm going to skip over that one. Thank you. I'm glad to hear it's a unique idea, and hopefully it's appreciated. All right, we have about 15 minutes left. This is your warning. If you've not asked your question yet, ask it now, or I definitely will not get to it. I will try my best, though. Can you use adult nursing as a femdom act? Yes. Long answer, anything can be a femdom act if you do it in that context and that's your intention. And it's consensual, obviously. I did not see this question last time, I don't think. Hey, Evie, I was wondering if you wanted to share any thoughts on the Lily Phillips documentary. Who and what is the Lily Phillips documentary? I'm Googling it. I'm finding out. Lily Phillips. Lily Phillips. Oh, is that the lady who did the, like, I had sex with, like, however many people in a day or whatever? Oh, I slept with 100 men in one day. I feel like I didn't cover that because I felt like everyone on Earth was covering it, and, like, it wasn't necessarily the most, like, exciting thing to talk about. I mean, I didn't know they made a documentary about her. Or was it for a documentary that she did it? Maybe that's what happened. She's 23. Oh, she looks older than me. This is what happens when you get too much filler. This is what happens when you get too much. Oh, there's some pictures where she looks younger. You gotta be careful when you get too much tox done, and then you start looking like you're old trying to look young as opposed to just like young. Apparently somebody else named Bonnie Blue did 1,000 people in a day. The 25-year-old abruptly revealed on Instagram that she'd slept with over 1,000 men in under 12 hours, which translates to just 41 seconds spent with each. Well, did they all comment her? Probably not, right? Just, here's 30 seconds, moving on. Here's my thoughts about that. One, it's probably not worth talking about because all of these things are just marketing stunts. They're not like any sort of genuine exploration of like human sexuality or anything like of any real substance. And now she's apparently doing an anal sex challenge, which is a terrifying idea. But ultimately, in the day, it's kind of just like a marketing stunt for advertisement reasons, which I don't find particularly compelling in any way. But at the end of the day, though, she's an adult. She's allowed to make whatever decision she wants to make with her body. She may end up regretting this later, but ultimately, in the day, I think that human autonomy in regards to sexuality is important, and she could be making mistakes. But also, people do lots of things in their lives that are probably mistakes that aren't great for them, like blowing their retirement savings on a fast sports car, going on a super expensive trip to Cancun, spending all their money on NFTs. Like, okay, sorry, you're an adult. You get to make that decision. Hopefully you were informed ahead of time. I can't really be an outside arbiter of whether or not you were adequately informed or not before you did the thing. I just don't know what else I would contribute to the conversation beyond it's marketing and it's working great for her. And I think people have sort of interpreted it as something about sex work, oh, this is proof that sex work is terrible because look at how emotional she was after all of this and whatever. And I don't think it has, first of all, most sex workers, pretty much any sex worker is seeing 100 people a day. It's just not happening. But also sex is emotional and you can be having a really good time. And then we talked about, sometimes your hormones and emotions just take you for a fucking ride. You can't really do anything about it. And you could consent to everything, have a good time, at least have a neutral experience. And then afterwards, be in tears or teared up because you went through something that involved a lot of exertion. There are people who cry when they get in fist fights. And it doesn't mean that they're sad about the fist fight happening. It means that that's their body's response to that level of adrenaline or that level of exertion being required. So yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't read into anything in particular about oh, she hates it and she had her consent violated. I don't fucking know. That's not my decision to make as an outside third party. And if she's saying that she's fine with it and she consented to it and she's doing it again, the forces that are manipulative are probably more likely to be just the forces of fame and capitalism and a desire for money and prestige and to be known for something versus individual men necessarily or masculinity or something as a concept violating her consent, if that makes sense. But this is not really something I've looked into with any level of detail. It's just I've heard about this kind of secondhand. I don't know what the details are. I don't really necessarily want to watch a documentary about a woman being fucked by 100 guys. I've already seen Ayala's, whatever the fuck her name is. I've seen her tweets about her birthday sexcapades. I don't need to have any more of that in my fucking life, okay? I'm sort of one and done on that. In the documentary, she says that she didn't know HIV could be transmitted through oral. There's also controversy because she cried in the documentary afterwards. It makes me think of rack fries and aftercare. Well, hopefully you're just testing everyone. Okay, are you testing everyone that you're having sex with for HIV? Because if you're not testing everyone for HIV and you're taking on that risk, then that's a problem. You probably shouldn't be doing that. But also you're a fucking adult and you're doing this for a documentary. It's kind of on you to be informed about the acts you're engaging in. If you are, it's one thing to be, and I'm assuming she was came up with this idea on her own and was I'm going to do this and it's going to be a really big thing and I'm going to get so much fame and attention from this, which is different than a partner coming up to you, proposing an idea, being pushy about it, and then not informing you of the thing they're asking you to do and what the risk associated with that thing is. Versus you coming up with an idea and planning it and executing it yourself. Well, the only one steering the ship there is you, baby. Then you got to make sure that you know what you're getting into. And that's on who was a sex educator going to jump through the fucking ceiling to be oh, by the way, here's something about HIV that you need to know. The Google is free. Google is free. You're an adult. It's not illegal on the internet where you live. This is information that you have open access to if you want it, if you care about it enough. But I can't stop anyone from being misinformed, unfortunately. I don't know if this is like a bad take or not, but I just like, I don't know. And yeah, again, like I wouldn't read it into not having watched it and not knowing what she's crying about. Just her crying by itself isn't an indication of consent or not. And I think it's a mistake. Like this is like repeatedly a bugbear for me and like my content and like the way that people talk about BDSM and consent is like people mistake pleasure and happiness for consent and displeasure and crying or lack of pleasure with non-consent. And you can consent to activities that are bad for you, that don't feel good, that you regret later. And it doesn't mean that they were non-consensual or even that you shouldn't have been doing them. Like sometimes bad sex is okay because it's a learning process. Like I talked about this on Twitter the other day. Like let people have bad sex. Let people make mistakes with their partners. Let people do things that are like technically suboptimal sexually. Like it's fine. Fascism is happening. Just fucking go for it. You know, like whatever. I mean, within obviously within the limits of consent and all of that, obviously. But it's okay to do things that are like make you emotional that you regret later that didn't work out how you thought they would because that's part of being human. You can't prevent bad things from happening all the time everywhere. And like if it's a calculated risk that you're willing to take, then okay, then what do you want me to do about it, you know? Also very worth noting, not testing your participants for HIV is such a thing as just leaving yourself wide open to a lawsuit. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, get tested. To me, it just screams social experiment. It does. It has like very like social experiment energy to it. Yeah. It's kind of like silly to me in a way where it's like, it's I don't know. People are like, oh, we don't want to blame women. It's not blaming women. It's just like, you know, she's an adult. If she wanted to be more informed, if she wanted to be safer, she could have taken the opportunity to do so. What was another adult in the room supposed to do? She's another adult, right? Like, she's not like, I mean, if she was doing this as part of a job contract, if like with somebody else, or like if a porn studio had hired her to do this, you know, then there'd have to be more active involvement from the company of like, hey, we're going to make sure you're informed in this. We're going to do this testing. We're going to meet these industry standards. But the fact that she didn't know certain things like that indicates to me this was not like affiliated with like a big industry professional, but I don't know. Yeah. It's impossible to live regret-free, or at least big regret-free. I think we all have regrets in life, things we wish we would have done differently. That's, again, also part of being human, but it's how big they are and how consumed by those regrets that we are. Yeah. Alrighty, Aphrodite. Let's continue on. I do wonder if there's going to be like another chapter of that. She's definitely trying to make it happen again by doing an anal challenge, but do I care? No. Will I be tuning in? No. Yeah, but I also don't know, like she just said that she didn't know that HIV could be transmitted through oral, which does not necessarily mean that she wasn't testing, but also if that's a fear you have that you didn't know that and then therefore you're concerned that you could be exposed to it, well, you shouldn't have an exposure concern if you're testing everybody and they're testing negative and they're following like quarantine protocols and all that stuff, right? Hopefully. But this is why, you know, gangbangs and all that are difficult to organize. My little baby is so sleepy. Look at this dog. She's so cute. I love her. I love her with all of my heart. All right, we're talking about Linux for some reason. I don't know why. I'm confused. I don't know how Linux and grilling. Well, you'll take me on a ride sometimes, and I'm okay with that. I like surprises. It's all good. Talking about grilling. What's your favorite way to cook tofu? My favorite way to cook tofu is freezing it, then putting it in boiling water, in salted boiling water, and then tearing it up into little pieces, and then putting it in an Instapot with rice and a bunch of seasoning, and then cooking that all together, and then have a little like tofu rice dish. Bingo, bango, bongo. There you go. My other favorite way of having tofu is doing all the same steps, but instead, for a summery treat, you do torn up little tofu bits that are salty, like not too salty. I'm not a big salt person, so imagine this being like very lightly salted, okay? Salt, balsamic vinaigrette or vinegar, or like a balsamic reduction, sorry. Cherry tomatoes, fresh basil, a little bit of pepper. Okay, make a little caprese salad, but with tofu instead of mozzarella. Very good, very delicious. Oh, thank you. Sean gifted another 5 memberships. Thank you so much. Hopefully people are getting the memberships. If you want to get a membership, but you've not already, you do need to check your account settings so you can make sure that you have membership gifting enabled so you can receive them. Depending what platform you're on, iOS versus Android versus desktop versus, Firefox versus whatever. Like, it's going to be a little bit of a different process, but if you Google it, there will be instructions on the Google forums on how to do that. My mom has a vegan-only briquette grill. What is a briquette grill? I can kind of picture what I think that is, but I'm not confident. We're talking about estrogen. All right, I'm trying to get to questions, though it is entertaining to read all of the comments about this. Are we talking about the creepy things that trad wives do? Hopefully not a very dumb question. I doubt it'll actually be very dumb. I have a brat that recently likes to flirt, but I am too slow to notice it and reply properly. Typical guy thing. Any tips on how to get into it faster, not to miss it? Barking up the wrong tree here. I am not good at recognizing flirting. To be honest, I think the best way to calibrate to how your partner flirts is to, when you think it could be happening, have a very large range of what you think could be flirting. And then when you think that thing is potentially maybe happening, you go, wait, are you flirting with me? And then if they giggle and say no and spin around, or they say yes, then you know that it's actually happening. If they say, no, I'm not flirting, what the heck? And they act confused by it, then they're probably not flirting with you. But they're brats. They could also lie. Like, gotta be honest with me. I'm trying to figure it out. But I am also very bad at telling if people are flirting with me or not. So I don't know if that's like the best way to go about it. But if it was with a partner, that's what I would do. I'd just try to be like, hey, is this how you're flirting with me? Because this is not natural for me to attune to this. But I am trying. You have a burning question? Oh, I'm going to try to get to as many of them as I can. I don't think I've seen a question from you yet, but I know that I missed a lot in the middle because the chat booted me to the bottom because there were too many things in the chat. Okay. I don't see any questions from you, Gabriel. I don't see any questions. So if I haven't gotten to your... Oh, wait, no, here we go. Okay, just saw it. I just got ghosted by a new pup/sub. I realized I may have gotten a little too hard too soon in the dynamic. Do you think I should leave them alone, or is it okay to reach out and apologize? Well, if they ghosted you, that they're not responding to your messages, right? I mean, in that case, it's a values question. Like, what would make you feel best about yourself? Not to try to get the other person back, not to try to mend things and get another chance, but like, what would make you feel the best about yourself? And I think it is likely that for a lot of people, if they feel like there's something in their relationship that they regret, that they want to get off their chest, it's worth saying that. But I'd be very clear about it when you do say it, that like, you're not trying to win them back. You're not trying to like do too little too late. It's just that's on your heart and you want to say it and make sure it's out there in case they ever read the message. But you're not expecting any reply from them, and that like when somebody ghosts you, and there's like people with anxious attachment sometimes will not talk for like a day or two, and it's just anxious attachment do be like that sometimes, and that's like not healthy. But like for people that don't have like healed attachment wounds that could happen. So I'm assuming you mean like actually ghosted, hasn't talked to you for like several days to like 5 days to a week, like definitely not fucking talking to you. Like for 2 or 3 days, you've reached out, you've tried, like maybe 5 or too many. If you've tried repeatedly to reach out to them for even like 2 days and they haven't gotten back to you and they normally would have, they're not answering your messages, your calls, whatever. Okay, that's ghosting, right? But you can reach out to them and say, hey, I'm not trying to get this relationship back. I'm considering this, meaning our dynamic has ended. And for you, I would not go back to the person who ghosted you, even if that does get them to re-engage. They have shown you that you're just not going to feel secure in that relationship. And it can start a really, really bad dynamic if you get back with somebody, who was a ghoster. Who hasn't like gotten back to you and doesn't have some kind of like really good reason for it. Like I was on a boat in Alaska and then I dropped my phone in the Bering Sea and like I didn't get back to port for 2 more days and whatever, right? Like even if they really apologize, like that to me is probably somebody who's not ready to be in a relationship with you, possibly a relationship at all. And I think if somebody is doing ghosting with a person, that means something is like not working in the relationship. There's some lack of compatibility, lack of healing that needs to be there. And yeah, it's a red flag kind of all around. So I don't know if that helps necessarily. But I think if you feel like you want to apologize for your own sake to get it off your chest, I think that's fine. But I would have that for your own healing, I would send that. And then I would start the process of removing them from your social media, your contact list, however you've been in touch with them. Oh, goodness, baby. You okay? Got some... Oh. Got some hunkies. Okay. Got some hunkies. We're good. Okay. So I think that is probably a good answer on that. Actual BDSM question. I normally associate punishment with scenes, but in some of your responses and videos, you frame punishment as actually for behavioral modification. How common is the latter? Is that also paired with positive reinforcement? So yes, it depends on the dynamic. Yes, people do pair positive reinforcement with punishment for behavior modification in BDSM relationships. A lot of people only do punishment, which I feel like doesn't work for a lot of people, but for some people, they respond very well to punishment and it works very well for them. But because my perspective is mostly coming from a DS perspective, and that's kind of the subcategory of BDSM, the subcategory that I exist in the most, that's what I see. But if you're in more of a top-bottom, pick-up play, casual play world, you probably see punishment more as a play style, as a framework, rather than a correction tool for a DS relationship. So it more depends kind of what pond you're playing in, less so like absolutes, because I'm not sure. I think probably overall, because having a DS relationship is relatively rare. Most people who are doing BDSM are doing occasional top-bottom play, either with a committed romantic partner or with casual partners. They're not doing 24/7, DS relationships with like a punishment structure or anything like that. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question. It is a couple minutes after 8 now, so I'm going to wrap up and go because I want to sit and finish watching the YouTube video that I had on before I started this. But thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate it. I really, really am glad I get to spend a little bit of my Friday evenings with all of you chatting. Have a great weekend. Stay hydrated. Stay safe out there. And I will talk to you again very soon.